Hi y'all, it's been a little bit, but I'm done mulching. The past week I have spent getting the garden ready for the heat. I think I've mentioned several times that I do not enjoy the heat that comes on during summer and working out in that. So I've been working relentlessly to get all of the drip irrigation finished and also to mulch. It's Memorial Day weekend here, and this tends to be the weekend that I tend to do a lot of my mulching and finishing up the garden because the temperatures are going to the 90s just this coming week, and I don't want to be out in that, and the plants are going to struggle because we've not had any rain in over a week now, and we're not expected to get rain any of this coming week until the end of the week possibly. So getting it mulched so we can water everything in really well is really good for the garden. But everything looks so good. Look at this. I need to come through still and clean up the bulbs that were left over from early spring. There's still a little bit of foliage here and there, and I'm trying to decide whether I'm going to leave these 𝗟𝗶𝗸𝗲 𝗦𝘂𝗯𝘀𝗰𝗿 hydrangeas. 𝗦𝘂𝗯𝗀's not my favorite. The blooms tend to turn brown earlier than a lot of the other arborescens hydrangeas. They do still stay really small, but I may test them in this spot because I've never really had them in a spot that gets pretty good irrigation. This has not got drip on it, but it does have a sprinkler head that kind of sprays. You can actually see the area that it's sprayed because it's dark there in this freshly put down mulch. I also came through and removed the 𝗟𝗶𝗸𝗲 here that I installed a year and a half ago. Several of you mentioned that was probably not a good choice when I installed that about a year and a half ago. But the variety was Big Blue, and it's a 𝗟𝗶𝗸𝗲 𝗦𝘂𝗯𝗀, which is not supposed to spread quite as vigorously as some of the older varieties of 𝗟𝗂𝗀𝗲, but I was having shoots come up 2 and 3 foot from where I originally planted these plugs a year and a half ago, and I just decided it was going to give me trouble if I kept continuing to pull up those plugs. So I came through and dug it up. Now, I don't know if you've ever dug up 𝗟𝗶𝗸𝗲. This was not very established. It had been in the ground about a year and a half, so it came up fairly easily, but there's still a possibility it could come back in certain spots. I have dug up 𝗟𝗶𝗸𝗲, the variegated one that I have out front that a lot of people ask me about. It was 2 big patches when I moved into the home, and then I dug those up and split them. I had to cut them apart with a saw because the root system was so vigorous, and 3 or 4 years later it started popping up in the same place I dug it up from. So even though there wasn't any foliage all those years, it still popped up randomly that long later. So careful with your 𝗟𝗶𝗸𝗲, and that's why I'm kind of hesitant to plant it after I was seeing how quickly those were spreading. I did leave 1 clump, which I'm going to try and manage, but if it becomes too difficult, I'll remove it as well. I thought 1 right here would be a nice accent on the end. And I don't know if I'm going to put anything in here this season. These are 𝗟𝗏𝗏 arborvitae, and I also don't have anything over here. I considered bringing in like an Angelonia sedum because this area right here doesn't get as much sprinkler overspray because the sprinkler system that was here, there was one under the shed, so that had to be capped. So we don't have any irrigation that kind of reaches this area very well. So I'm thinking of a yellow sedum here of some variety, but this year I probably won't do anything till maybe the fall. We'll see if I get my ideas going or not. I'm also getting in some tiny quickfire hydrangeas, and I actually considered, because I do have drip here, so I could add a line in front, planting the tiny quickfire along the bed here. They only get about 18 inches tall, and they bloom super early. I'm going to take you up front and show you. The tiny quickfire is already blooming this season. It is not time for paniculatas to typically be blooming, and it's already putting on buds. So that's really exciting, and I could do a short little hedge of those right here, but I'm not sure. These 𝗟𝗏𝗏𝗏 arborvitae, I had a viewer mention to me, I think it was last year, they're like, you do realize 𝗟𝗏𝗏𝗏s get 3 to 4 foot tall and wide. And I went and checked, and Proven Winners has actually changed their sizing on them. When I purchased them, they were supposed to get 1 to 2 foot tall and wide. Now, it depends on your condition, so I'm going to keep an eye on them, but I may end up having to remove those in the coming years. They're growing really nicely this year. but they were supposed to be just perfect 1 to 2 foot wide spheres and create a nice kind of round hedge all the way down here. And if those get 3 foot wide, they're not going to fit this space, and I'm going to have to do something different. So keeping an eye on these, and we'll just see how they do in the coming years. That's something about plants. A lot of plants are trialed for a really long time, and they, depending on what conditions they're growing in and where they're trialed, they may perform slightly differently. And sometimes the manufacturers or the breeders of these plants have to come through and revise their statements on the sizing of their growth after they've been grown in other conditions, after they've been released. So just something we'll keep an eye on. I have these planted everywhere. I purchased, I think, 36 of them, 216 count flats, and planted all of them in the ground, so they're everywhere in my garden. So if they get that big, it's going to be an issue. We'll have to pull them all out or find someone else to give them to for a nice home, but that's a lot of plants to give away. So we'll cross that bridge when we get to it, as they say. The roses are starting to blooming. We got tons of buds here, but the big shrub roses and climbing roses I have are also blooming. So we've got Teasing Georgia, which is this yellow one that I planted to climb on this arch here. I'm going to let it get through its first bloom, and then I'm going to come through and do more training of the canes up the moon gate. Right now I don't want to cut off any limbs that may be producing buds because I want to get as many flowers as possible, but we'll come back and prune off the smaller canes and lead the bigger canes up the arch here, so that looks a little better. Since I shot my last video, the peonies have come completely into bloom and are already blooming out. I think I mentioned they were not being held up as good this year. They're much taller than usual, I think, this year. Last year they held up pretty well. And I don't know that they will stay here. I'm not a huge fan of regular peonies. The Ito peony I really love because they hold up their own blooms. They don't have to be staked. And mine this year did a wonderful job. None of the blooms drooped. These, they're beautiful right now, and I'll cut them back and they'll be a nice foliage for the rest of the year. But I don't love peonies because they have such a short bloom window. It's been a week and these are already out of bloom, and there won't be any blooms for the rest of the season. A lot of the other perennials tend to linger a little longer. Peonies just don't. So you can cut them and put them in your fridge when they're like a marshmallow size and bring them out throughout the season to bloom for you. I'm not that dedicated to the peony, so if I get peonies in the future, they'll be the Ito variety most likely. And these will stay right now because I don't have anything to replace them with, but in the future, if I have a shrub that I really would rather put in the garden, that might be one of my first options to remove, actually. I did come through and cut down these green tower boxwoods because they were really dead. There was no growth possibly coming back here. You can see how lifeless these stubs were, and I'm going to see how quickly they want to grow back up. If they do not tend to want to grow that quickly this season, which boxwoods don't, then I may remove them, but I think I'm going to give them a season, see how they do, since last year was their first year, I think. Lots of other roses blooming. We have this beautiful clematis here. This is reminiscent coral, I believe, that blooms really nice. I'll just take you around and show you all the roses right quick that are blooming because that's the best time right now that we can do that. Some of them have mulch on them. This is one of my favorite David Alston new ones. It's called 𝗟𝗏𝗄𝗏 V-Y-E, and it has really large, roughly blooms. I haven't noticed a whole lot of scent with them, but they are really pretty and they're blooming perfectly right now. All this nicely mulched garden. There's some Atlas roses back there. I've mentioned Atlas doesn't hold their petals very long for me, so they're a really quick blooming rose. They are really pretty and have a really nice scent, but they're not much of a rose to hold its petals. And they're just kind of almost like a daylily. They're just for a couple days. It's all the petals, the blooms last, and then they're falling apart. This is Olivia Rose Alston, and it's looking a little rough this spring. It's got a bug eating on it. I don't tend to do a lot of treatment on my roses. Some years they do better than others, and this is a year I haven't done any treatment, and this one's looking rough. A lot of the others look perfectly fine. This is a beautiful orange iris that I think Shriners had sent me by mistake. I don't remember the name of it, but it wasn't the variety that I ordered. And so I kind of just stuck it out here in the back. And this is the first year it's bloomed, and it's really lovely. Orange completely all over. Nice pop of color here in the corner. Getting a lot of more perennials kicked in here. This is 𝗟𝗶𝗸𝗲, so it'll bloom white. These 𝗟𝗶𝗸𝗲 bloodstone are starting to bloom out. The banana's still looking pretty good. It's getting settled in. It was drying out a little bit there initially, but I've been able to keep enough water on it to make it happy recently. And then the classic coral dianthus are blooming here, along with all this catmint. This is 𝗟𝗶𝗸𝗲, perfect profusion salvia, which these are almost ready to come and cut back. These did not stay in bloom very long. This is a variety that I picked because it's supposed to rebloom more vigorously than some of the other salvias, but the actual blooms on it did not last very long. And you can see the fuchsia over there, back to the fuchsia, still has pink buds on it, and it was blooming almost a month ago, and this has only been blooming about a week, so maybe 2 weeks. I didn't keep that close of an eye on it because I've been pretty busy getting things together, but more of this classic coral dianthus. Love this color. So nice. This rose right here is the Impressionist by Heirloom Roses, actually. And I love this rose. I didn't get a ton of blooms last year because it was brand new. This one's a little worn out, but look at all those fresh buds there that are just now starting to come out. This is a climbing rose. A lot of the canes died down over winter because it was a first year plant and that winter was just really rough. So I'm going to continue to train it up this arbor as the season progresses, and hopefully it will make some beautiful blooms for me the rest of the season. The one I had on this side did end up dying and did not come back, so I cut it back completely. This is the Distant Drums, which is the mom or dad to the Impressionist, one of the roses that it was bred from. And these blooms look a little better than the last video I showed you. It's just now starting to come out, but you can see it fades to this light pink, but comes out a little darker, more orangey tones there. Check out these beds. I'm trying to keep them sufficiently watered so everything settles in. The sun patients were looking a little crispy. Overall pretty good. Those closer, like these look fine because they're closer to the lawn and get overhead irrigation. Those right there in the center and the back towards there were getting a little crispy, but I think now that they're getting rooted in a little better, they'll be moving along quite nicely in the coming weeks. This is the tiny quickfire hydrangea that I wanted to show you. Look at those buds already. It's going to be blooming here before long. Back by this phlox. I do not remember the name of this phlox. I've had it for several years and I randomly picked up, I think, 3 of them at the garden center. It's created this nice drift directly behind this hydrangea. There was a wee white hydrangea planted right here and I removed it because it would burn so bad. This tiny quickfire is gorgeous, and the actual foliage turns a lot more deep blue color as the season progresses, which is really interesting for a hydrangea. But I really like how this is looking here. You can see all the different layers with the alliums. This is ornamental oregano, drops of Jupiter. I think it's the Proven Winner's newer version. This is the biggest year. It's been in the ground 2 years, and it is just massive. But it smells good, and it's also blooms like little purple flowers closer to the summer. But we've got some more 𝗟𝗶𝗸𝗲 in here. This is a juga. There's a butterfly bush, more of these irises. This is the one that I was supposed to get originally that I had to be resent by Shriners. The oak leaf hydrangea is still doing good. No buds yet, but there are some sun patients or some begonias tucked in here that are coming along nicely as well. And a back in black sedum tucked in there with the Japanese forest grass or 𝗂𝗂𝗧𝗂𝗂𝗧𝗂𝗂𝗧𝗂𝗂𝗧𝗂𝗂𝗧𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂 first season, and the weather has been warmer than usual, so I'm not too terribly concerned about it. But this gold right here is doing actually quite well on pretty much full sun locations, protected from afternoon sun. Since it's been a week, let's check out these containers. They are looking incredible. I'm really loving all of these new Proven Winners 2024 plants. So I went over these in the last video. We have Bermuda Beach, Supertunia, Saffron Finch is the yellow. This is one called Hoopla Orchid, I think. Cherry Drop, Coleus. This is not a new one, but this is Imperial Blue Verbena, Red Hawk Sweet Potato Vine. There is a Diamond Frost Euphorbia in there that's already kind of getting overtaken by some of the other plants, which is incredible. I think that's all that's in this container, but looking really, really good. And this one too, still doing really good with the Diamond or Dichondra Silver Falls, Mini Vista, and these new Super Benas in here. This is Cashmere Pink and Cherry, Royal Cherry, I think it was. This one also looking really good. A lot of the same plants in here, filling out. Can't even see the soil. And it's been like, what is it, 2 weeks since I planted these up, maybe? I don't think it's been a whole 3 weeks yet. It has been 3 weeks. Around May 9th was when they were delivered, so right around exactly 3 weeks since they were put in this container. Looking real good. In this area, I am falling in love with. It's starting to bloom really, really nicely. These begonias are really beefing up now, so from the road they create a lot more impact. And I think this is going to continue to just be an ever-evolving, beautiful space. Here are these Let's Dance Can Do hydrangea. Got all these buds on them, looking real nice. And we will end here at this incredible hydrangea hedge again. I keep showing you updates on this one because this is crazy how quickly these have budded up and gotten so big this year. They've never been this big. You can see they're actually going into the emerald green arborvitae on either side of them. Typically I could walk through here, and that one I probably still could, but this is the first year that they've made it much more difficult to do that. Like this one, I wouldn't be comfortable walking through without breaking something. And those are some quick updates on the garden. You may notice I have ferns hanging over the pergola like I wanted to do. I will be going over a little bit about how I got drip to these in a separate video. I'll probably shoot a really short, less than 10-minute video to go over how I set these up on drip, because not everyone does drip irrigation, but it's really nice because I won't have to touch these for the rest of the season. Until frost, when I throw them away, they will be watered for me hands off for the rest of the season, which is really nice. It's one of the things I focused on this week. I mentioned getting all of that set up because it's going to be 90 and everything needs to be happy with plenty of water. Thank you guys for joining me. And remember, in a world full of hate, be a light. Take care, everyone. Bye.